So I ran out of time on my last screencast. Let me just pick up with what I was talking about before. Commas inside quotation marks is the next thing that I wanted to point out. So I noticed a lot of you, if you include a comma, like you're continuing on with your sentences, that you're putting your commas outside of your quotation marks. Your comma stays with the quote because that is where you divide it naturally. So you're actually pausing the quote to continue on with your own text. So make sure that you keep that comma inside the quotation marks here. The third person narrator illustrates Miss Mallard embracing her newfound freedom as she carries herself like a goddess of victory. I'm making sure that that comma, because I'm pausing that quote for just a moment to continue on with my text, so the comma needs to go as close to the quote as possible. That means we need to tuck it, make sure that we always tuck it inside of the quotation marks. The other thing that I wanted to say as well is if your quote has its own punctuation. For example, I think there were several exclamation points that were used in the story of an hour. If it already contains a punctuation piece like a question mark or an exclamation point, it stays inside the quotations. However, if it's a period, a semicolon, or a I think period, semicolon, that might be it, or colon, which is really rare that you'll have anything like that, but it goes outside of the quotation marks. So, for example, she was drinking in the elixir of life through that open window. The reason that I do that is that I put my ending punctuation at the end of my citation. A semicolon is always going to go on the outside of quotation marks. It just is an odd piece of punctuation. So make sure that you remember that. So anything like a question mark or an exclamation point, leave it with the quote. Periods and whatnot, leave it outside the quote so you can complete your citation. Now, you can do a citation with this as well. So it would look like that. So even though it has its own quotation or its own punctuation, then I also would include the period at the end. Okay? All right. So introducing authors by first and last name in the stories in your introductory paragraph. So let me go back over here to the CTE just to show you. It's always a really good idea to get in the habit of introducing your, when you do your introductory paragraph in your essay and in your CTE, to introduce your author by first and last name and the story that you're talking about instead of launching directly into your analysis. So for this paper that's coming up, you've got 3 authors and 3 stories. You'll introduce those in your introduction, and I'll go into detail a little bit more about that in breaking down the prompt, and I have a screencast on that you're going to look at later this week if you're following your agenda. After you introduce your author and the stories in that introductory paragraph or at the beginning of your CTE, if you're writing a CTE, then you refer to your author's last name or the author by last name only for the rest of the writing. So I saw a lot of people referring to an author by their first name, their full name again. That's not necessary out of respect, and it's just the proper way to do it. You just refer to them by their last name after that initial introduction. Okay. The last thing that I am concerned about with the CTEs is that a lot of you're doing okay when you're finding textual evidence, but tying that prompt thread like all the way through your CTE. So 102, 201, and 202, when you take it, they're prompt-based writing. So the teacher will always give you a prompt for you to write a paper on, and the prompt is that thread, that prompt has to be followed all the way throughout. So the prompt for this past CTE, for example, let me open that up so we can look at it. Let me think about what I'm trying to find real quick. Your prompt stated, what effect does having a third-person narrator have on the readers or your perception of Mrs. Mallard in Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour? And then I ended up giving you a little bit more that you could address in your prompt as well. How would the reader perceive Miss Mallard if the story was told by her in first-person point of view? So you have to make sure that prompt is the underlying current of your entire paper. Everything that you talk about, your evidence, your explanation, your claim, everything has to point back to that prompt and answer it fully. A lot of you did really well, like in the beginning, and then you just kind of lost the train of thought by the end, and you didn't refer back to that third person narrator again after that initial time in the claim. Whatever you claim that you're going to do, whatever your thesis is, that thread, you have to follow it all the way through, okay? So make sure that you do that when you're looking back over your essay or looking back over your responses, your CTEs. Make sure that you are following that prompt, that you continually point back to that third person narrator, not being redundant, not repeating the same thing, not repeating that prompt over and over, but everything you do should tie back to that prompt. And that's going to be really important coming up this week because you do have your first essay. Just really quickly, I want to show you a couple of things about the assignment, their essay assignment this week. You should still be in Short Stories 1 for January through February the 4th. Okay, and you guys should be here. You should be at the bottom. You should have already read A Rose for Emily and gone through my notes, my screencast. Perhaps you're starting Soldier's Home today so that you're finishing up that last story for your essay. But you, if you haven't read A Rose for Emily, if you haven't read A Soldier's Home, you need to make sure that you knock those out today to give you maximum amount of time to write on your essay. After that, you have your essay prompt. And I'm just going to look at it really quick with you while I have you here on screencast. Discuss the impact of third-person narration in Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour, William Faulkner's A Rose for Emily, and Ernest Hemingway's Soldier's Home. Think about what the choice of narration does for the development of the main character and how we, as the reader, view and interpret the story. You have to use at least 6 pieces of textual evidence for this essay. Okay, so you have to have at least 6 pieces, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it's a good idea to shoot for 2 pieces of textual evidence for The Story of an Hour, 2 pieces for A Rose for Emily, and 2 pieces for Soldier's Home. It's okay if you have more, but less is not acceptable. You need to make sure that you have at least 6 pieces for your paper. Make sure that you take the time this week to go over everything in detail in your I'm trying to pull up my I know what I needed to do. You make sure that you finish out with this unit in the agenda, because I go over breaking down how to break down the literary analysis prompt. Okay, I go over how to get started with essay 1 and a video for that. And then I also really strongly encourage you to go to that essay resources help desk, figure out how to format your paper. You get some help with writing a thesis statement. I got you some patterns there that you can look at to kind of help you write your thesis statement for your paper. Your document specifications teaches you about incorporating quotes into your writing. Creating a quote sandwich gives you some great reporting verbs for incorporating quotes into your essay. And I even gave some help, essay help, student work samples, introductions and conclusions, what those should look like for you. So take some time this week and really look at those things before you submit your essay. At the very top of that essay resources help desk, there is a checklist and a screencast on the rubric for the essay, how I'm grading you, how you get your grade. So make sure that you check that out as well. Okay. As always, if you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to me via text or via email. And I look forward to reading your papers on Thursday night, 11:59. Don't be late.